Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of EntheoRadio, where we talk about shamanism, psychedelics, and altered states for expanded healing and visionary purposes. This is your captain speaking, Capt Hugh T Alkemi. I'm here live, and our shows do welcome callers and caller questions. You can listen in, or you can ask a question of myself or the special guest today by calling 347-855-8334. Once again, that number is 347-855-8334. The show today is a very special episode where we welcome our second guest from the UK. This is our UK week on EntheoRadio. The show is titled Plant Spirit and the Cactus of Mystery. We have Ross Heaven on the show, and I'm going to read his bio before we introduce him. Ross Heaven is a therapist, shaman, and the author of almost 20 books on shamanism, healing, and spirituality, stemming from more than 20 years of research and experience with shamans in a variety of cultures. He first visited Peru in the 1990s to work with the curanderos of the Amazon and the Andes, and to drink the plant medicines ayahuasca and San Pedro. He has returned many times since then, including a prolonged stay in the rainforest, where he owned an ayahuasca retreat center to begin a long-term dieta with San Pedro and Salvia divinorum, a story that is told in his books, the newly released Shamanic Quest for the Spirit of Salvia and Cactus of Mystery. Ross Heaven, welcome to the show.
Hi. Well, thank you.
And I appreciate you calling in all the way from across the large waters of the Atlantic Ocean.
So I'm your second UK guest this week, is that right?
Yes.
I'm having a UK week.
What's that?
Having an English week.
Radio.
Okay, well, we did lead the field, obviously, in psychedelic research. You guys in America got there very late in the day. You know, we were working with entheogens, right back in the day. There's recorded work on our involvement with plants right through from the earliest days of, the kind of the Druids and the Picts. So we've been working with this stuff for quite a while now.
Yes, as I mentioned in the, like, kind of our heritage to be talking to English shamanic practitioners. So I appreciate you for doing the work over there and keeping it up for generations.
Yeah, shamanic practitioner. Let's get into controversial territory already. That's a ridiculous phrase. That phrase comes from an invented practice of what is so-called Western shamanism, neo-shamanism, core shamanism, I suppose. There is no such thing as a shamanic practitioner. A shaman is a job like any other job, like plumbing or being an electrician. If you've got a problem with your taps, you don't call a plumbing practitioner, you call a plumber. You got a problem with electricity, you don't call an electrical practitioner. You call an electrician. And with every other therapy or method of healing, like aromatherapy, if you work with oils and massage, reflexology, if you work with massage in the feet, herbalism, if you work with herbs, we call a spade, right? So let's dump this term, shamanic practitioner, and let's talk about what we actually are when we do this work. When we do this work, we are shamans. Now, we may not be very good shamans because we might have only started yesterday, and it takes a lifetime of practice in this work, like everything else, to become good at it. But let's use the correct terms to begin with, because this core shamanic practitioner stuff is nonsense, and it's diluting shamanism. For one thing, it has no reference to teacher plants at all, which is the absolute core of shamanism worldwide, not the drum, not the rattle. It's working with plants. And core shamans won't even touch that stuff. So, We are shamans, and we work with the spirits of plants, and that's what all shamans do universally. If there's a core, it's that. It's not the stuff that you read about in books or go to weekend warrior classes to learn.
Oh, brother, thank you for that. I agree with that, and in America there's a very rifted community around that. You can either be a psychedelic researcher or therapist, or you could be a shamanic practitioner without the entheogens, because of I guess various drug laws and the way that the 60s and the 70s rolled through here.
Oh yeah, or you could get real and call yourself a shaman if that's the work that you're doing. Why do people want these ridiculous labels and titles behind them and clubs to join? You know, the work of a shaman is it's always been at the frontier. It's always breaking through the boundaries. It's always turning over new soil. It's never following somebody. The people who are the pioneers in this work, in moving consciousness forward, in moving evolution forward, are always the outsiders. They will be the musicians, the poets, the writers, the shamans, the people who work with entheogens, people outside of the mainstream. And that's the way it has to be. If you're stuck in the consensus middle ground, there is no evolution, because that's not possible. So why join a shamanic practitioner club? You know, if you want to work shamanically, learn to become a shaman, or call yourself that, and do the real work.
Mm-hmm.
I may preach more later on. This is my opening blast across the bows here.
No, thank you. I think that can really set the tone for this interview, and I want to actually jump right into how long you've been doing the work, and tell us about the first times you experienced the entheogens, and the ones that we're talking about a lot today are the ayahuasca and San Pedro and the Shepherdess Salvia divinorum. So tell us about your first times with those.
Okay, well, with those plants, my first times were, I think it was 1998 was the first time I went down to the Amazon. I'd worked with other plants before. Mushrooms, actually, was the first teacher plant that I got introduced to when I was a child, I guess, more or less. Growing up on the borders of Wales, where the mushrooms grow in the United Kingdom, you couldn't really avoid that. And I happened to find a teacher who was, well, I might as well call him a shaman as well, although he wouldn't have used that term himself. That wasn't his practice. And he was a herbalist and became a friend of mine just when I was a kid, you know, introduced me to the plants. That was another story, though, story told in other works. I first went down to the Amazon in about 98 to clear myself of about 20 years of sins upon my own soul. I used to work for the devil. I used to be an international marketing consultant for pharmaceutical companies, right? So I was selling drugs that killed people. And part of my job was to buy medical doctors around the world and have them present at our conferences to say how good our products were. It's not hard to buy a doctor, by the way. You know, you just offer them a laptop on which to do their new presentation and a week in Florida staying at a 5-star hotel so they can do this 1-hour presentation at a conference. It's easy, you know. You feed them all the caviar and women they want, and they'll say anything you like. Medical doctors, do not trust them with your life at all, within an inch of your life, or pharmaceutical companies. I speak from the inside here. So, anyway, all of that have been... Because when you enter the medical profession, even at the scrap end like me, you try to convince yourself you're in a noble profession, that you're saving lives. And you want to believe that, and at first it may seem like that. But the more you are part of it, the more you realize that it's nothing like that at all. You're in a business, and there is no money to be made for that business by curing anybody's disease. What you want to do is keep those people in a position where they feel a little better and can manage their disease a little more effectively. So they keep coming back, customer loyalty, you know, for your drug. There's no money in killing them either, you know, so you've got to keep them just in this kind of middle ground zombified space where they'll keep returning for more. But there are plants that work far more effectively than the medications and do not have the side effects and do not harm people. And part of my job as well, I guess, was to suppress that information. So, there's a couple of drugs, a couple of plants in combination in the Amazon, Oregon Sacha and Una de Gato, which will eradicate AIDS from the body within 6 months. I don't mean manage it. I don't mean give you a cure. I don't mean make you feel a little bit better. They will eradicate the virus from your body. You will not have AIDS when you are blood tested after 6 months. In fact, there are doctors down there doing even more remarkable work where they inject the plants directly into the bloodstream, and their research shows that they can clear AIDS within a week. Now, part of my job for these pharma companies was to promote 2 AIDS management drugs or systems. And I knew, there was information like this, but there was no money in passing on that information to people. So I'd been working in an industry which was literally killing people. And I had to own up to that at some point, to really take a stand on what my position was in the world. What I was here to do as part of my life journey. Was it to kill people or be complicit in that in some way? And I walked out of that job, went down to the Amazon, drank ayahuasca to find out what the hell I was doing with my life. But the first plant I actually drank by accident, if there is such a thing, when I got to Peru was San Pedro. I'd arrived in Lima, the capital of Peru, and the next day I was flying down to Iquitos for, I think, 7 ceremonies or something like this with ayahuasca. But the night that I arrived, some guy just wandered up to me, as they do in Peru, and said, "Do you want to come to a ceremony?" I thought, I don't want to go to another ayahuasca ceremony. I've already got a number lined up. And he said, "No, it's San Pedro." So I went and drank San Pedro at an all-night ritual with him in the ruins in Lima. And man, it was awful. It was cold. It was dark. They shoved tobacco up my nose. They made me jump up and down. They gave me an emetic before they gave me the San Pedro to make me be sick. And when I couldn't be sick, they chased me around with sticks, beating me. And I'm never going to one of these ceremonies again. But there was something in the San Pedro, which touched me in some way, which spoke a truth to me. And every time I went back to Peru after that, I always sought another opportunity with another shaman to find some other San Pedro to try. And eventually, I'd say this was now almost 10 years ago, I found a shaman whose San Pedro is exceptional. And she doesn't mess around with these kind of old-style-y rituals either, which detract you from your time, your audience with the teachings of the plant and the healings of the plant itself. She gives you strong San Pedro, and she allows the San Pedro to do the work. So when we run ceremonies now together, or I run ceremonies, that's the process that we use. It's in the daytime, it's warm, you can see nature around you, you can see the earth breathing, you can see the fractal poetry of the clouds transcribing faces and images and insights into your own sickness for you. All of that's available to you because the medicine speaks. And we're just around to intervene if somebody needs some help or to offer some healing, but it's the medicine that talks. So that's a really long-winded way of answering your question, but in a nutshell, I first drank both of these medicines in about 1998, so I've been drinking them for a while now.
Excellent. San Pedro was actually the first medicine that I started on, and then I went to mushrooms. So I applaud you for that lovely story. That is definitely an intense experience, becoming more real than anything you had experienced before that, working for the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh man, I don't want to start ranting again about the pharmaceutical industry, but there's a whole chapter in one of my books about my relationship with the pharma industry and how they go about the business of killing people. So I'm not going to bore you here with that. You can go and read about that in your own time, or I might post it on the web sometimes for people to read.
Which book is that for our listeners?
This is a separate one from the two that we're talking about. It's one that just came out in England called Drinking the Four Winds. It's about I did a long-term diet with San Pedro, some of which I talk about in Cactus of Mystery as well, and with salvia. So I'm running an ayahuasca center in Iquitos at kilometer 14 at this point when I began, and I'd gone really specifically not just to run that center and to help people with their cures, but to also to begin a long-term diet with San Pedro. And to do this diet, I would drink San Pedro I don't know, it felt like practically daily. It wasn't, but a number of times a week. And followed the standard dieta, the almost like a fast, a meditative fast. You know how dietas work. And drink ayahuasca in order to see the spirit of San Pedro. And at one of these ceremonies, I asked San Pedro about the admixtures. There are secret ingredients sometimes to a San Pedro brew, and I may, if you twist my arm, tell you a couple of them later on in this interview. But I was asking San Pedro, show me the admixtures, show me the other plants I need to know about. And he produced, and he is a he, in my estimation, the spirit of San Pedro is male, and produced for me a whole council of plants that were vying for my attention. I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a long, long diet if I've got to diet all of those. And it did end up being. I'm still chasing the end of it now, but it's taken 3 years really to get through this diet. And one of those was Salvia divinorum, which was the bizarrest one to appear, really, because it's not a Peruvian plant, it's a Mexican plant. And it doesn't seem to have a great deal in common with the other plants that were presented to me. The other plants being things like tobacco and ergon sativa and macura and lima and things of this nature, Peruvian standards, really. But I followed the advice of San Pedro, and that's how I got involved in doing this research with salvia that went into the salvia book that's just come out. And the teachings of these plants are amazingly compatible, but incredibly different.
Okay. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there, yeah. I was just wondering whether I should just carry on talking there about what the teachings are, but yeah. I thought I'd be going to give you a chance to ask a question.
I'm going to take that chance to ask a question. So, like, you're describing all the different plants, and then we're talking about the bizarre relationship that is composed of Salvia divinorum and your experience as a shaman, as somebody who's learning from the plant, as a student of the plant. And I really think that there's a huge focus in America right now because we have the potential to legalize, to maintain its legality or to regulate its legality. And vastly right now, due to some stuff that's happened in the last 5 or 6 years, people have started to see this plant more as a dangerous plant.
Salvia. Salvia is a dangerous plant.
And
are you saying that salvia is being regarded as dangerous? Salvia, yes, you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, correct. Good. Salvia is dangerous. There are no two ways about that. Not because of what it might make you do. I mean, there is nothing inherently bad or evil in any plant at all. There is nothing in a plant which is there to give you a bad trip. If you have what we would maybe, mainstream media might describe as a bad trip, that's because that bad trip is already in you. You've hidden that away in some corner of yourself, some dark shadow that you don't want to look at. But you can bet your life it's still leaking out into your relationships, your interactions with other people, your feeling about yourself, the way that you create reality based on the dream of yourself that you're living. Those bad trips are us. They are not the plant. What the plant may do, in order to liberate you from that, in order to affect your healing or begin the process, is to introduce you to those dark, shadowy parts of yourself so you can see what you really are. And then, once you've embraced the truth, or at least acknowledged it, instead of continuing to live a lie or an illusion, you can begin the process of healing to deal with those shadowy bits. But while you're not looking at them, they will continue to grow and grow and grow within you, like cancer. It could actually manifest as a cancer. So there's nothing inherently bad or evil or it's going to hurt you about salvia, but you better be ready for some bizarre and explosive teachings and being present in a reality which is as real as the room that you're sitting in right now. That is the order that we're talking about here. This is not like, I can see pretty lights about things, or wow, the Earth's alive, isn't it groovy? This is, you are in a totally other reality, which is as real as this reality and could be. My belief is that salvia actually literally, not even metaphorically, but literally takes us to another dimension. It gives us access to the other dimensions around us where things are slightly different and we are slightly different. And it scares the crap out of some people in the ceremonies of salvia that I run. But it's amazing how it gives them insights into themselves, real therapeutic insights into themselves, and begins the process of effective healing for them as well. It's like 10 nights of psychotherapy in one 5-minute smoke of, a salvia pipe. That's how amazing this stuff is. But it's not a party drug. You see these jerks on YouTube smoking it at parties and shitting their pants. Well, big surprise, and good. I really hope they do crap the pants because they're idiots. This is a teacher plant, a sacred plant, and it will give you access to realms that you don't even know exist, information that you do not even know is out there, all within yourself. But you have to, like all plants, treat it with absolute respect, and then it will teach you. There are ways of doing this. The diet, for instance, which I talk about in the Salvia book, may also talk about it in the Cactus book in a different respect, I don't know, is one way to approach salvia with respect and to take care of your own safety as well. But I am not for making any plant whatsoever illegal. I think God knew what he was doing when he gave us plants, and politicians don't seem to know what the fuck they're doing most of the time anyway about anything, so I would leave it in the hands of God.
All right.
But you need to be careful with salvia, that's a fact.
Could you answer the question of how these plants heal us? Besides physically, on a more broad span, healing as a holistic thing.
Yeah, there's 4 levels, it seems to me, of healing available from any plant. But let's talk about teacher plants. There's the basic medicinal properties of that plant. So if you go to a herbalist, the herbalist will diagnose your symptoms and find a plant which has qualities which can help you, to overcome the problems that you've got, to deal with not overcome the problems, but deal with the symptoms of your problem, let's say, to address the outcomes of your soul sickness. So whatever physical problem you've got, there is a plant for that. There is another level, however, of healing with the plant, which is to understand its spiritual intention. So a plant, for example, like, let's say nettle. Nettle is a plant that I've dieted. The purpose of nettle is to heal things like problems with the blood, problems with the urine and bladder infections, anything to do with fluids in the body, actually. Nettle is very good at sorting out. But the spiritual intention of nettle, when you drink it and then you drink ayahuasca and you meet its spirit, is very much to clear out negative energies and spirit intrusions, we might say. It gets inside of you and it stings these other entities to death, in fact, until they want to leave your body. So the spiritual intention is about clearing things generally for you, not just the fluids in the body, but everything in your life, because it clears up your energy system. So that's the second order of healing. There's a third level, in that every plant, whatever its own speciality, is a member of the plant kingdom, just like we as human beings may have our specialities. You're a radio interviewer. That might be a speciality you have. You could also be a great football player. You could also be a great father or a brother or a son or whatever it may be. No plant is limited to one thing like no human being is. But you also are a member of the human race. So even though you don't know me, you don't know my life, you don't know some guy who's living in South Africa or South America, and you don't know his customs or the way his belief systems or anything of that nature, there is still something you can empathize with because of the humanity that you share between you, we share between us. And so all plants, because they're part of the same kingdom, know every other plant on some level and can be a gateway to that other plant as well. So it's not just teacher plants that open the door for us, although, they're very powerful at doing that. It's also, any plant that you choose to work with in diet can be your ambassador into the other world. And the fourth level of this, and again, not just teacher plants, but but they, I suppose, are the most obvious examples. Every plant knows that it is part of God, because it is not burdened by the analytical, rational mind that we carry around that wants to veto everything and make it be proven and valid in scientific and mathematical terms. It just knows that it is. And you are too, and so are we, and so is everybody else that's listening to this, because if you want this in kind of, terms of physicists might describe it, when the Big Bang happened, that energy that was released throughout the entire universe is still in process and flow. And it's in everything. It's in the desk in front of you. It's in your cat. It's in you. It's in the clouds. It's in the trees. It's in the sky. Everything is one energy, and we are that as well. So if you want to call that omnipresence, God, which a theologian might use, to describe the same thing, then we're that too. You are the same energy as God, hence you are God. But you have a rational mind that says, no, I'm not worthy, God's something else, it's outside of me, blah. Well, plants do not have that rational mind. They know they're God. So when you say, how do plants heal, it's everything from curing a direct physical problem within your body to introducing you to the palaces of God. That's how amazing plants are. And, of course, for that reason, governments want to outlaw them, make them illegal. We can't have them because no government wants you to know that you have the power of God, right? It would make them look a bit small.
For our listeners, I'm on the air with Ross Heaven, if you're just tuning in. I'm going to encourage you to call in now because you'll get to continue listening for the bonus material on this episode. We're about to go into archiving a recording stage. So once again, our phone number is 347-855-8334. Ross Heaven, as well as leading workshops and ceremonies throughout Europe, Ross he's offered the opportunity to visit Peru with him, and as part of his Cactus of Vision retreat programs, participants work with indigenous healers to explore new consciousness through shamanic encounters with visionary plants. You can check out thefourgates.org, THEFOUR gates.org, to visit details about these sacred journeys with Ross Heaven. Go on, my friend. I love the way that when you describe things from an herbalist perspective, from someone with experience, I can feel the viscous level of your experience with your words and the things you've been through with these plant spirits. So I'm eating this up. This is lovely. It's bitter, and it's bittersweet, and it's very enjoyable. So continue on.
Good. Well, one of the things that you learn pretty quickly when working with plants, particularly the teacher plants, or maybe not. I was a bit slow with this actually, but then I'm pretty dumb. Maybe your other listeners will pick this up a lot more quickly than me, But you need to get to a point with all of these plants, and this is one thing they're teaching you, where you can say honestly, genuinely, and with a smile on your face, look, man, I know nothing. Because we don't. Human beings do not know anything at all. And I'd put scientists and their scientific proofs within that category as well. Every scientific proof is a scientific hope or a scientific opinion, in my estimation. We do not know anything at all. And the fact that we pretend that we do, and we play these games of knowing, and try to recruit other people to our tiny club of knowing something about something. I mean, yeah, we know the most basic things, right? If I put a glass in front of you and it's got some liquid in it, we can both probably agree, okay, there's a glass in front of us that's got some liquid in it. From there on, it becomes opinion, because you might say, well, the glass is half empty, and I might say, no, look, it's half full. And this is how wars get created, man, over ideas and ideologies, which have... It's like saying my God has got a bigger penis than yours, My imaginary friend is more beautiful than your imaginary friend. This stuff causes wars, people's ideas and their absolute certainty that they know things when we know nothing whatsoever. So, some hundreds of years ago, Newton is sitting in a garden under an apple tree, so the legend goes, The apple falls on his head and he goes, wow, okay, eureka, it's all about gravity. Einstein comes along a couple of hundred years later and he says, gravity? I defy your gravity like this, tossing a pen in the air, Weak force. Actually, it's about this general theory of relativity that I've got here, and the world breathes a sigh of relief. Wow, now we know something again. Except that, a couple of years ago, they smashed a couple of atoms together in the Hadron Collider and found out that there's this thing called a God particle which moves faster than the speed of light. So Einstein's theory that holds the universe together at the moment, E equals mc squared, is no longer correct. It's wrong, because that c is a constant. That is the speed of light. If nothing could exceed it, and now things are moving faster than the speed of light. Well, man, that means all sorts of things are open to us. In fact, it means that the teachings of Salvia are open to us, because Salvia talks about movement between other dimensions, quantum realities, the nature of reality, what is truth, and certainly time travel. Time travel is inherently possible into the future and into the past with Salvia. In fact, on a workshop, I had a guy who did it. He had a particularly strong experience with Salvia. His Salvia experience in ceremony went on for about an hour. That's unusual, particularly because we were only using something like 20 times strength Salvinorin, so not the highest grade. I keep it pretty low for people, so they can introduce themselves to Salvia but not have too extreme a time. And so those trips last maybe, 10 minutes, 15 minutes while you're in the blast-off stage. There's some work that we do subsequently, but in that blast-off, his blast-off phase lasted about an hour. And he had some intense revelations. And he went back to his room that night, and he couldn't sleep. He wasn't tripping, because you don't with Salvia. Once it's done, it's done. But he stayed up all night and wrote in his journal about what he'd been told by Salvia. One of the things being that time travel is possible and comes from within us. All human beings are capable of this, but we need to learn to walk before we can run, were Salvia's words, because where time travel will take us is to some bizarre and crazy places that our brains are not big enough yet to understand or cope with. And he said as he was writing that down in his journal, he looked up and saw that it was dawn. And we lived next door to a farm, so the cockerel next door crowed. And then he went back to writing in his journal, looked up again, and it's dark. And then as he sat watching the darkness outside the window, the dawn came up again for the second time, and the cock crowed next door again. And Salvia said, and there you go, that's how easy it is. You have just time traveled. Because these particles that they bash together in the Hadron Collider, right, these things that can move faster than the speed of light, they're not stuff out there. They're in you. These particles make us up. And so Salvia had told him time travel is eminently possible. You can do it right now because it comes from within you. And I guess shamans have been saying the same thing for thousands of years, right? That you can journey back to a moment of trauma, for instance, and deal with that and bring the soul part back that you lost at that moment. So that's time traveling to an event that may have happened 20 years ago, but seizing power back from that moment, bringing it into the now. That's how we do this work, and that's how easy it is to create a new reality for ourselves. Well, there you go. We don't know anything. That was my point. We believe that we know, and that's our biggest problem in the world. If we can get to a point where we can say, I do not know, because there are no answers, and the world will still continue to exist. When Newton got it wrong, and then Einstein got it wrong, and now, quantum physicists are telling us that we're living in a computer simulation, right? Which was another revelation from Salvia, that we're all living in, Boris with his Xbox is the way I described it. We're all living in a game, a computer game, and scientists now at the cutting edge of string theory are telling us that that's true. They have discovered ones and zeros, computer code within the fabric of the universe. And their hypothesis now is we're living in a post-human society. 300 or 500 years into the future, some scientists and anthropologists are sitting around wondering what the hell went wrong. Who pressed the red button and blew up the world, And they're running a simulation to find out what happened. And we are that simulation, So if Obama takes it to Syria, man, and World War III begins, they'll have their answer, won't they? Pretty soon. But, in all of that time, when we were wrong, the world didn't fall apart, okay? Human beings don't even need to be right. We don't need to know for the world to go on. It's just our arrogance, our human centricity that makes us think we're the top of the food chain and want to know everything so we can control it all. But you can't control diddly, man. You don't know anything. You don't know enough about yourself even, or your own motivations to even go near trying to know anything else. So these are the kind of messages of Salvia. And if I had to put it in a nutshell, Salvia's key teaching is, look, dude, cut the crap. Let's start talking real about where we are as human beings so that then we can take a step forward. Because if you want to evolve, and this process is a thing in flow, if you want to move forward and start doing something more interesting than squabbling over puddles and bits of land, start chasing the stars and go out there and see what's going on, create a new frontier for yourself, then stop jerking off believing that you know anything or you got something to say. Okay, well, that's it enough there. You're making it sound as if I know something,
Well, it's hard to follow that because, I ask you another question and then it's like, oh yeah, the questions are this reality.
Well, isn't it?
So,
but some of the traditional shamans, the real shamans, not the weekend warriors, right? Real medicine men. Yeah. Actually maintain a place of mystery on their reservations. One guy that I know, on his reservation, he's a traditional medicine man. I forget the tribe, but he was born and raised in this tradition. He's an old man now. He's in his 70s or something. He says within his reservation, there is a place where it's by the water and there are trees around it, and it's always misty. There is always a mist there. And when people in the tribe get too sure of themselves, they think they know something, they will take themselves off to that place of mystery and sit there. And they're not looking for answers, they're looking for questions, We should aspire to having more questions in our lives. And if we want to, we can chase answers for the fun of it. Not in the belief there is any answer to be found, but because it's an interesting game to play and it gets us out of bed in the morning, Don't ever expect an answer because there is no answer. While you're alive, there will never be one. And let's hope that's true, Once you find an answer, it provokes another question till the moment of your death, because once that process stops, you are dead. And, once scientists come up with the great theory of everything and politicians tell us how it all works on an economic basis and they're proven correct, the whole world flatlines as well, God ceases to exist because God can't evolve. God must also follow the rules. And, there is no point in living, and, in fact, we cannot live without questions. We need to be in the mystery. So, by all means, ask your questions, I won't give you any answers, or I'll give you an answer, but it won't mean anything. But we can have this conversation anyway, for fun.
And for the fun of it, because experiencing is what we're leading people to do, and I feel that just by your sharing what you've experienced, it'll encourage others to be explorers in the fashion that you have been, and to go down there and experience even the cures that we have yet to incorporate into Western medicine.
I really wish people would. Walk away from their prescription pills, walk away from their doctors who don't know anything and also quite possibly are on my payroll or were, spouting words that I had told them to spout. Forget them. That's old science, The best your doctor can do maybe is set your bones, They're good bone cutters, but if you ask them an opinion on anything, you won't get anything useful. You'll just get some poison at the end of it. That's how the medical profession works. I really wish people would start working with the plants and exploring these cures for themselves, because I know they work. I have seen people with San Pedro, just because we're talking about San Pedro, let's choose this, with one drink of San Pedro, cure themselves of cancer. Lymphatic cancer is one of the stories I tell in my book. A guy who drank the medicine and threw up his lymphatic cancer as circles or wafers of glass that were hidden within him. And the shaman said, yeah, okay, that's the energy of cancer gone from your body. He goes for a medical check. There is no cancer left in his body. People who have been cured of paralysis, people who have been cured of diabetes, addictions, endless. because we give these things words as if they really exist, like, here's an addiction that I've got. An addiction is many different things, and it really comes from a lack of spirit. There's a hole in the spirit body, a bit of the soul is missing, into which a particular type of spirit can come. So there is no such thing as an addiction. There are different spirits which take different forms, and the outcomes within us may lead to what we would call addictive behavior. But there are types, it's like an alcoholic is not the same as a gambler, is not the same as a sex addict, is not the same as somebody who's addicted to prescription pills. There's no such thing as an addiction. But all of those things, gambling and excessive alcohol usage and the taking of prescription meds and too much sex, leading to unhealthy outcomes for the physical body, I've seen cured with San Pedro, again, in a drink or a drink or two. People with ME, people with MS. The list is endless, of people who have been cured by San Pedro. Not even going near what ayahuasca thinks it can do, because, actually, and I say this quietly so that ayahuasca may not hear me, ayahuasca ain't all that, San Pedro, if you want the real cure and to learn how to be a human being in this world, is the answer. And if you want some more questions, salvia is the solution there. But ayahuasca has its place too. But, the take-home message is the plants work. Medicines, Western medicines, do not work. They will not get to the root of your problem. At best, they will address the symptoms, and within that addressing of the symptoms, they will quite often make you ill. Sometimes they will kill you, and the statistics back that up as well.
Russ, we are in the last 4 minutes of our show, and I want to encourage you to give our listeners a little bit of information about your current projects and where they can find you.
Well, I'm easily found. My website is a good place to start. That's thefourgates.org. So it's thefourgates.org. That's all one word. So current projects, I'm just about to head off actually down to Peru in a couple of weeks' time. I have a group out there with me who'll be drinking some San Pedro up in the mountains, working with the shamans out there. Then I'm going down to Mexico to do some work with peyote and salvia and no doubt mushrooms as well. I want to try and track down Maria Sabina's daughter, if she's still alive. I don't know if she is. So we'll be going to Oaxaca and around Mexico for a couple of months, seeking out some shamans there. Then I'm going to have New Year in New Orleans, just for a party. Well, for a party and no doubt a bit of voodoo and witchcraft as well, but that's my kind of party. And all the workshops that I run in Europe, I call them workshops. Actually, they're ceremonial events with teaching as well about how the plants work and giving people access to the medicine so they can try them for themselves. So we have ceremonies with salvia and San Pedro and ayahuasca are running in Europe as well, and all the workshop dates for those are available through me. So, and writing, I've got another couple of books I've got to write. I'm kind of writing this stuff out of me, and then I kind of just want to spend 6 months on a beach and eat some mushrooms or something. I think that's what I'll do. But a couple more books to come out yet. One of which is on ayahuasca, and what ayahuasca isn't and how not to do it as much as what it is, because again, that's another plant where you read so many stories and there's so much bullshit written about ayahuasca and what you're supposed to see and how what it means, and nobody ever wrote a book, did they, where they say, I spent 3 hours in a ceremony, nothing happened at all, then I shut myself and went to bed. And that happens in ceremonies as well, right? It's just that every author is a liar. They select their stories deliberately for the drama and to sell some books. So I'm going to tell it like it is in my ayahuasca book. So there's a few of those coming out too. But that's it, really. That's me. That's what I do.
Well, I thank you profusely and organically and spiritually, and our listeners, on their behalf, I can speak that they are hopefully half as inspired as I am, because your life is a is a ceremonial tool for teaching and sharing the experiences that you've been through. And I, just by listening to you in this brief conversation, have been inspired. So EntheoRadio thanks you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you've been inspired and not expired. That's my first rule with all these ceremonies. My only rule, in fact. Never, ever kill the client. Apart from that, it's their time with the plant. Okay, good talking to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, EntheoRadio is signing out. This is Captain Hugh T Alkemi.